work in a right triangle. The only thing that matters is C is the hypotenuse. A and B can be either leg. So in a right triangle, you take the sum of the squares of the two legs and it equals the square of the hypotenuse. So A and B doesn't matter which is which, but C has to be the hypotenuse there. So let's look at the next example on your handout and see if we can work through it. Day one, you need to get out that handout from yesterday. Okay. A piece of property shaped as a right triangle. So what should I do right now?
Draw a right triangle.
Draw a right triangle, okay. With the longer leg 10 meters shorter than twice the other. When I talk about the legs, which sides are those?
And B.
Right, the ones touching the right angle. So I don't know the first one. What do I want to call that? X or A or whatever. The second one is 10 shorter than. What does that mean? You're going to be subtracting 10 off the end. Twice the other one. So 2x minus 10. Alright, so we've got these sides labeled in our picture. Alright, the hypotenuse is 20 meters longer than the longer leg. So this was the longer one. So 20 meters longer than that, what would you have to do? Add 20. So that one was the 2x minus 10. If I add 20 to that, I could just go ahead and simplify that to 2x plus 10. Alright. So far, so good? Now I've got a right triangle. We can do Pythagorean theorem. So that says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now be very careful. When I square this, what do I have to do? I have to FOIL. There's more than one term, so you have to think about it. That really means there are two of these. You have to FOIL it out. So that would be 4x squared minus 20x plus you minus 20x would be minus 40x plus 100. This one we have 2x plus 10. So if I FOIL that, I get 4x squared plus 20x plus 20x, so that'd be plus a 40x plus 100. Alright. Now what? Add like terms, okay? This is a quadratic, so we want to set it to 0. So I'm going to have to bring over all these terms. So if I subtract my 4x squared, that would just give me a 1x squared. If I subtract my 40x, that would give me a negative 80x. When I subtract my 100, those cancel out. Okay, now what? So what can I pull up? Take out of that. So if we set okay, make sure both of those answers are reasonable for our problem. Can you have a piece of land with a side length of 0? No, that wouldn't make any sense. So I'm going to throw out the 0. So my only answer here is 80. The question was to find the lengths of the legs of the triangle. So the legs are, the first side was just x, so that would be 80 meters. The second one was 2x minus 10, so 2 times 80 minus 10 would be 150 meters. Make sure you're answering with the sentence on those. Questions? Let's look at another question. A boat is being pulled into a dock with a rope attached to the boat at water level. What should we do? Draw a picture. Okay. So we've got a boat, and I am very artistic, so I've got my nice little boat here. Okay, and I've got a dock, and got my water here. All right. We have a rope attached to the boat at water level. So here's my rope. Okay. When the boat is 12 feet from the dock, so my rope is going from the boat to the dock. The distance from the boat to the dock is 12 feet. Where is that going to go? On the bottom. This distance right here is 12. What kind of angle would this be? The length of the rope from the boat to the dock is 3 feet longer than, what does that mean? Plus, so twice the height of the dock above water. Do I know how tall the dock is? So if that's my x, then this would be 3 plus 2x. Okay, so I have a right triangle. We could do Pythagorean theorem. Remember, C is the hypotenuse, so that's going to be this one. So it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Because this is two terms, you would have to write it twice in FOIL. So I get 9 plus 6x and plus 6x would be a 12x plus 4x squared. Now what? Set it to 0. So 4x squared minus x squared would be 3x squared. Got my 12x. 9 minus 144. Negative 135. What did I do with all these? Okay, let's divide by 3 to simplify it a little bit. Then we have x squared plus 4x minus 45. So now we can factor. Multiply to a negative 45, add to positive 4. We set each of those equal to 0. We get negative 9 and positive 5. Are both possible answers? No. You wouldn't have a height of negative 9. That would put our dock below water, which it's not. So the dock is 5 feet tall. so much. I want to look at a few more problems. These are like some on the Math Excel assignment. Some of these we've seen before. This one's a little bit different, but the next two are really more review. A farmer wishes to enclose a rectangular region. So, what would you do? Draw a rectangle. He has 120 feet of fencing and plans to use the barn as one side of the enclosure. So he's actually only going to put fence around 3 sides of this rectangle. I need to come up with some variables here. It says x represents the length of one of the parallel sides of fencing. So these two sides have a length of x. We're not putting fence over here because this is where the barn is. So what would this be in terms of x? Close. If you called it y for a minute, if you add up all the sides, it has to equal how much fence are we using? So 2x plus y equals 120. So that missing side has to be 120 minus 2x. Would that make sense? The total amount minus the part you've used so far? Okay, part A, I want the area of this region. How do you find area of a rectangle? Okay, so my area, my length is x, my width is 120 minus 2x. You could leave it like that, you could distribute if you wanted. That's up to you. So that's part A. I've got my area. What are the restrictions on x? X has to fall between some numbers. What would be the absolute smallest? 0. Would it ever actually equal 0? No, so I'm going to say 0 is less than x is less than. The biggest it could be, but if it was 120, both of these would be 120. 60 would be the absolute biggest. Would that make sense? Because if you had 60 on this side and 60 on this side, that would use all of your fence. Okay, so x has to be some number between 0 and 60. Part C. For what x values will the area be between 1,600 feet and 1,750 square feet? We can do this by hand. You would just set your area equation equal to each of these individually and solve them. So, box method, Pythagorean theorem, however it works. We could also use the graphing calculator for this. We've done some of that on the graphing calculator before. So let's try that and see if we can figure it out. I think there was one on your homework that had like volume of the box and trying to get the volume to be between two certain numbers. So what I'm going to do is go to my y equals. The first y1, I'm going to make my area equation. So my 120x minus 2x squared. y2, I'm just going to do one of these at a time. I want to find out when the height is 1,600. Now, we have to adjust some things, so let's go to our window. We've already said that x has to be something between 0 and 60, so we could use those for the x-min and x-max if we wanted. My y, it needs to go all the way up. I'm trying to find out when it's 1,600, so maybe I'm just going to go to 2,000. The y SCL is what you're counting by. You can make that something bigger, so you can do like a 10 or a 20 if you want. Does everybody have their window adjusted? Okay. So let's find this point where they meet. So you can go to second, trace, intersect is number 5. First curve, all you have to do is hit enter. Second curve, hit enter. Guess, we just have to get our cursor close to it and hit enter. So I get my x value to be 20 feet. Mm-hmm. Now on our graph, it actually hits twice. We really only need to find this first point. What's going to happen is, if you look at both of these, it's going to basically give you the rectangles flipped. So, if I took this one and flipped it on its side, they're really the same rectangle. That's what that second point is if your length and width are reversed. So we're just going to go with the first point. Now we need to find out when it's 1750. So I'm going to go to my y equals, change my y2 to 1750. And we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go second, trace, intersect. First curve you can just hit enter, second curve you can hit enter, guess, get close to that point, and hit enter. And I get my x to be 25. Okay, so if my x is between 20 and 25 feet, it'll give me an area in the window that we want. Any questions about that? Okay, part D. What's the maximum area? How do you find a maximum or minimum? Vertex, opposite of B over 2A. So that'll give me my x value. So my B here is the 120. My A is -2. Negative 120 over 2 times -2. And we get 30. Is that the area itself? Alright, area is area of 1,800 square feet. The dimensions, if you look at this, your sides were x and 120 minus 2x. So my x was 30 feet. 120 minus 2 times 30 is 60. So 30 feet by 60 feet should be the dimensions of the pin. Any questions about that? The last two examples on here are optional. We have done these before. You're not writing your own equation, you're just using an equation, finding maximum or minimum, plugging in values, using the calculator. Do we need to do any practice with that stuff? When I was looking yesterday, you guys were answering those questions on MathXL and not having any problems, so I feel like we're okay with that. So our quiz is on Monday. Bring your notes to class. You need to have the MathXL done, so get to work on